seat by Golan. Wish everything was this intelligent.
You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. Let's begin with the top stories we're tracking currently. India and Sri Lanka are expected to sign 4 pacts, including one on cybersecurity, after President Anura Kumara Dissanayake meets Prime Minister Modi today. Hundreds and possibly thousands of people are feared dead after the French Indian Ocean territory was devastated by a powerful cyclone. Britain officially became the 12th member of a Trans-Pacific Trade Pact, which includes Japan, Australia and Canada, as it seeks to deepen ties in the region and build its global trade links after leaving the European Union. Bitcoin surged to a record high above $105,000 in early Asian trade today, extending gains made since Republican Donald Trump, who has promised to champion cryptocurrencies, was elected US President in November. South Korea's conservative president, Yoon Suk-yeol, has reportedly failed to obey a summons from prosecutors investigating him on charges including insurrection, as he faces impeachment after declaring martial law. Tokyo city government will give staff a 4-day week in an effort to boost Japan's declining birth rate. This as the country's population is expected to fall for the 16th year in a row. Well, a big focus in a pivotal moment for India-Sri Lanka relations. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake is set to sign 4 key agreements, including one on cybersecurity, when he meets Prime Minister Modi today. Now, Mr. Dissanayake, who touched down in New Delhi last evening, is on a historic state visit from the 15th till the 17th of December, and his first international trip since taking office back in September. Now, during this visit, he will also meet with our President Draupadi Murmu and engage in high-level talks with Prime Minister Modi on a range of pressing bilateral, regional and global issues, is what we're told by the Ministry of External Affairs. The President's agenda includes attending a major business event, this will be in New Delhi, and visiting the sacred site of Bodh Gaya as well. By the way, this visit is seen as a significant step in strengthening the robust, multi-dimensional ties between our two nations. And Mr. Dissanayake's choice of India for his inaugural foreign visit, it does send a powerful message, as many have highlighted, underscoring his commitment to deepening Sri Lanka's ties with its neighbour. Analysts in fact argue that this decision is a clear signal of the importance that he places on fostering a closer relationship with India, especially after the unexpected rise to power, breaking free from the traditional political elite.
After a thumping victory in his country's parliamentary elections, Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayake is all set to shape Sri Lanka's future, and his first course of action, reaching out to crucial ally India. Dissanayake, often referred to as AKD, has arrived in New Delhi for a 3-day visit. He is accompanied by Sri Lanka's Foreign Minister and Deputy Finance Minister. Choosing India for his first foreign trip as president marks a shift in Dissanayake's foreign policy, moving away from China. Despite his past support for left-leaning and pro-China policies, the Sri Lankan leader has stressed that he will not let Sri Lanka be dragged into any geopolitical contest between New Delhi and Beijing. The visit marks a new chapter in the often complicated Indo-Lankan relations, especially considering India's historical tensions with the JVP, the party leading Dissanayake's coalition. The JVP was notably opposed to Indian interventions, particularly during the 1980s when the India-Sri Lankan peace agreement was signed. Dissanayake too made his name during the anti-India protests in 1980s. However, he has since toned down his anti-India rhetoric significantly, indicating his willingness to work with New Delhi. As Sri Lanka plays a key role in India's Sagar and neighborhood first policies, Dissanayake is expected to engage in talks with Prime Minister Modi, Foreign Minister Jaishankar, and President Murmu. Key topics are likely to include investments, infrastructure connectivity, debt restructuring, and ongoing fishing disputes. As Dissanayake begins his official visit, it will be interesting to see how India engages with Sri Lanka's new president and how the visit shapes the future of Indo-Lankan relations. With Disha Bagchi, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
My colleague Mohammad Ghazali is tracking this touchdown very closely. He joins us live at the moment. Ghazali, as you have been reporting, India and Sri Lanka are set to sign 4 key agreements today. Take us through the details you know and also the plan of action.
See, Parmeshwar, particularly we need to understand that besides these MOUs which we generally sign with many countries or the head of the states who visit here, what is the other significance of this visit? This is the first official visit of the Sri Lankan president who has come to power just last month, or in November the final vote count was done. And why this is significant? Because we know that how China is expanding its influence in and around the Indian Ocean region. We saw the regime change in Bangladesh, then Bangladesh's Jamaat party and other members were hobnobbing with the Chinese. We also saw how Maldives, the president there, President Moizu, he also came to power on an anti-India plank, but he recalibrated his approach with India. India took out developmental projects in Maldives. Similarly, with Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan president has an history of his political ambitions or political journey through anti-India plank, but after that, what a wise move was Delhi was that before even the elections, the same president had visited here, India, and has met Dr. Jaishankar. Immediately after his victory, Dr. Jaishankar visited Colombo, being the first Indian official or any senior official from any other neighboring countries to visit Sri Lanka, extend the invitation, and now the president is here. What Mr. Sri Lankan president is expecting from India, he has praised in the past about the Aadhaar card kind of enrollment back in Sri Lanka, or even cooperative like Amul. And besides that, the maritime security is one area where India will certainly would like to have a joint cooperation, because on India's insistence, Sri Lanka had worked on the suggestion of not allowing Chinese rings in the Indian Ocean region near the Sri Lankan waters. So these are certain issues which will certainly come up for discussion, but besides that, there will be MOUs on different sectors which India will likely to have with Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka also knows the fact that back in 2022, during the economic turmoil there, India was the first one to offer a bailout package for Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka knows it very well, and that is why even the new president who has arrived in India, these issues will certainly come up. Another major issue which has not made the headlines is about how India has been working on public diplomacy. We know that there is a large section of population which is Buddhist. We have, and the president is also expected to visit Bodh Gaya in the Gaya district of Bihar for religious tourism. So these kind of avenues are there for India and Sri Lanka to work together during this trip of president.
As always, Ghazali, thanks so much for joining us with Update, contextualizing the relations for us. As my colleague Mohammad Ghazali is reporting, this visit marks a new chapter in the often complicated Indo-Lankan relations, especially considering India's historical tensions with the JVP, which is the party leading Mr. Disanayake's coalition. With that, let's turn our attention to what's happening as far as the Middle East is concerned. Israel's government has agreed to double its population on the occupied Golan Heights, while saying threats from Syria remain, despite the moderate tone of rebel leaders who forcibly removed President Bashar al-Assad just a week ago. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a statement, has said, strengthening the Golan is strengthening the state of Israel, and it is especially important at this time. He added that we will continue to hold on to it, cause it to blossom, and settle in it. Listen in.
אין לנו עניין להתעמת עם סוריה. אנחנו נקבע את מדיניות ישראל כלפי סוריה לפי המציאות המתהווה בשטח. אני מזכיר שבמשך עשרות שנים סוריה הייתה מדינת אויב אקטיבית לישראל. היא תקפה אותנו שוב ושוב, היא אפשרה לאחרים לתקוף אותנו משטחה, היא אפשרה לאיראן לחמש את חיזבאללה דרך שטחה.
In other news, Israel has also announced that it will close its embassy in Ireland, citing Dublin's decision last week to support a petition at the International Court of Justice accusing Israel of genocide. The move was actually announced by the Israeli foreign minister, who said it was prompted by the Irish government's extreme anti-Israel policies. But you must also note that Israel has not applied similar measures to other countries, that includes Egypt, Spain, and Mexico, that also joined that petition. Meanwhile, the US is in direct contact with the Syrian rebel faction that led the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. This is what officials have confirmed. And the success of the main rebel group, which the US designates as a terror organization, you must note, has sparked debate among Western officials over how or if to engage as Syria's political transformation unfolds. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who pushed Washington's vision for Syria's political transition on a trip through the region this week, praised the positive words that we've heard, but what really counts is action, adding that the US could consider lifting sanctions enacted against Assad. That's a huge update. Washington is not alone in angling to shape post-war Syria, though. Turkey reopened its Damascus embassy just over the weekend, while Israeli leaders have called for more settlements in the occupied Golan Heights. Holly McKay joins us now from Washington, D.C. to make sense of what's going on and for further clarity. Holly, is the United States sending mixed signals by engaging with the Syrian rebel faction while also still designating it as a terrorist organization?
Well, it's certainly a very complicated situation, but I think that you have to deal with the reality that exists, not the reality you want. And the reality that exists is that HTS are the ones that led this offensive and are currently in charge of this transitional government. So I think it makes much more sense for the United States to have a seat at that table for what the next Syria looks like than to not have a seat at that table. And to have a seat does require dialogue. And as someone who's been a war reporter for a very long time, I will always take the option of dialogue over any other type of kinetic conflict.
Right, but with reports indicating that the US is considering lifting sanctions on Assad, Holly, doesn't this signal a shift in its policy towards the Syrian regime, or would you argue that it's simply strategic maneuvering?
It absolutely. Well, there's a lot of strategic maneuvering, but it does mark a very significant shift in the policy that the United States has had towards individuals that have been part of Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. And I think that it will cause a lot of criticism. There is a lot of reason to be concerned because right now HTS is very much on its best behavior. We've had no real signs of anything that indicates sort of taking a very extreme approach to managing Syria, but time will tell. And so that could really come back to hurt the government if they do end up lifting those sanctions. But I think it is going to be a little bit of a gamble that lawmakers are going to have to end up taking if they want to play a part in what the next Syria looks like.
Right. And what would you say the re-engagement of international powers like Turkey and Israel in Syria reveal about the changing power dynamics as far as the Middle East is concerned?
I think Syria is in a very strategic place in the Middle East. And I think we've had the Bashar al-Assad government for a long time and his father before that. So this is a really marked shift for the region. And anytime that happens, everybody is going to want some form of influence. Obviously, Turkey and Israel are right on the border of Syria, so they're going to want to have their interests met and their national security concerns assuaded as much as possible. And so that does require being involved in the country to any degree as possible. And that's also another reason why the United States, I think, is choosing to engage with HTS, because Turkey is a NATO partner and Turkey is the primary backer of HTS. So it is a very awkward situation when you have a NATO partner that is supporting a group and you have the United States that designate it as a terrorist, and that can cause a lot of internal conflict. And so I think we're going to see a lot of these issues coming up. And there's going to be a lot more questions before we get answers as the government unfolds. And I think the primary issue or concern is hoping that everybody gets some form of representation, because people didn't have this for a very long time. Right. And so I think that the United States' central mission here is to make sure that the Alawites, the Shia, the Christians and other minority groups are able to have their say in a government for the first time.
Holly, thanks so much as always for joining us on NDTV. We will, of course, revert to you for regular updates.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, former Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad airlifted nearly 2 tons of cash worth $250 million to Russia. This is during 2018 and 2019, as per documents that the Financial Times has reviewed. So Syria's toppled dictator secretly transported around $250 million in cash to Moscow over a 2-year period, during which Syria heavily relied on Russia's support. According to a Financial Times report, Assad's regime flew 2 tons of banknotes into Moscow between 2018 and 2019, where they were deposited into Russian banks. This was a time when Russia provided crucial military assistance, including mercenaries from the Wagner Group, and at the same time, Assad's family was purchasing luxury properties in Moscow. The regime has been accused of looting Syria's wealth and turning to criminal activities to fund its brutal war against its own citizens. And trade records, in fact, show that shipments included large amounts of US and Euro banknotes, with one 2019 flight carrying about $10 million in $100 bills for Assad's central bank. Later, this is in 2019 in February, another flight carried 20 dollar bills and 500 euro bills in this flight that was secretly transported to Moscow for Assad's purposes. And a secretive Russian intelligence agency is behind Moscow's most intense campaign of repression since the 1950s. This is what the Wall Street Journal has revealed. The story, the first written by Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, actually since he was freed after 16 months in a Russian prison, spotlights the Department for Counterintelligence Operations, which led Gershkovich's arrest. And what is this Russian spy unit actually up to? Well, the spy unit has accelerated efforts to arrest other US citizens in Russia, harassed Western diplomats, and is key to President Vladimir Putin's grip on power. This is what the Journal is reporting, adding that Russia's growing conflict with the West has only intensified Putin's obsession with spies. A Russian investigator told Gershkovich he was accused of being a CIA agent purely on the department's orders. Well, let's turn our attention now to Britain, which has officially become the 12th member of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, joining economic heavyweights, like Japan, Australia, and Canada. This actually marks a significant step in Britain's post-Brexit strategy to strengthen its global trade network and also deepen ties in the fast-growing Asia-Pacific region. Having announced its intention to join the pact last year, Britain now enters its largest trade agreement since leaving the European Union. Now, this move allows the UK to benefit from the CPTPP's trade rules and reduce tariffs with 8 of the 11 current members, that's Brunei, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, and Vietnam, effective immediately. Well, in other news, about hundreds and possibly thousands of people are feared dead after the French Indian Ocean territory was devastated by a powerful cyclone. Rescue workers, as we speak, are still attempting to reach some communities as they search for survivors. Now, entire settlements were flattened when Cyclone Chido brought wind speeds of more than 225 kilometers per hour, with the poorest living in makeshift shelters particularly hard hit. Some of Mayotte's population of 320,000 have said that they are struggling with severe shortages of food, severe shortages of water and shelter as well. Well, let's switch tracks now. Bitcoin has surged to a record high above $105,000 in early Asian trade, extending gains made since Republican Donald Trump, who has promised to champion cryptocurrencies, was elected US president back in November. Now, the price rose on news reports over the weekend that Trump would go ahead with a Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Fund, according to Tony Sycamore, an analyst at IG. Well, news and updates continue in a moment. Do stay tuned.
New day, new show, a new experience. Start your day with the news, not views. We bring you stories that matter and impact your lives. News that informs and keeps you ahead. From Maximum City, Mumbai, to the seat of governance, Delhi, NDTV brings to you the best breakfast show. The breakfast show only on NDTV 24/7 every morning at 8 a.m.
NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number 1 in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust. In today's today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Nishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
Festival of Faith, the world's biggest spiritual festival, the divine dip at the spiritual Sangam, a sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025.
We are able to maintain the democratic fabric and the democratic.
Welcome back. A Russian tanker carrying more than 4,000 tons of oil products has sunk in the Black Sea amid stormy conditions, while a second has run aground, threatening an ecological disaster. A Russian oil tanker carrying thousands of tons of oil products split apart during a heavy storm just yesterday, spilling oil into the Kerch Strait, while another tanker was also in distress after sustaining damage, Russian officials have confirmed. And the vessels were in the Kerch Strait between mainland Russia and Crimea, which Russia annexed from Ukraine in 2014 when they issued distress signals. With that, let's turn our attention to Japan. Tokyo city government will give staff a 4-day week in an effort to boost Japan's declining birth rate. The country's population is expected to fall for the 16th year in a row, and municipal authorities hope that a 4-on, 3-off work schedule could make childcare easier and less expensive, and in turn the thought of parenting less daunting. So essentially, Tokyo's government staff will have the choice of adjusting their hours to free up 1 day a week where they do not have to work. It comes as the number of babies born in Japan last year fell to the lowest since records actually began back in 1899, as the government warns the next 6 years to 2030 may be the country's last chance to reverse the trend. In fact, several other Japanese jurisdictions have introduced similar measures, as have South Africa, Brazil, as well as Germany. And a quick update from China now, where Beijing is urging Chinese schools to integrate artificial intelligence into curriculums for kids as young as 6 in a bid to build up domestic talent in the country's intensifying tech rivalry with the United States. In fact, in a new directive, the Ministry of Education in China has said the move would meet China's future demand for innovative talent by making AI classes the norm. This is going to be by the year 2030, which is just around the corner. Experts believe China is lagging behind the United States in generative artificial intelligence by at least a year and is in danger of falling further behind, despite Beijing launching a push to boost AI in universities as well as schools back in 2018. And meanwhile, pro-EU protesters took to the streets in Georgia as an electoral college dominated by the ruling party chose a new president known for his vehement anti-West views and opposition to LGBTQ rights. Take a look at the details.
In a fresh blow to the country's EU aspirations, Georgia has elected former soccer player and hardline Western critic Mikhail Kavalashvili as its new president. Mikhail is set to replace a pro-Western president just as protests intensify over the government's decision to suspend European Union talks last month. For over 2 weeks, tens of thousands of protesters have gathered outside Parliament every night. Mikhail, the only candidate on the ballot, secured an easy victory. Mikhail is a founder of the Powers People Party, known for being the main voice for anti-Western propaganda. He is a fierce critic of the West and has made numerous claims this year that Western intelligence agencies are trying to push Georgia into a war with Russia, which controlled the country for 2 centuries until 1991. Ahead of the vote, hundreds of protesters gathered outside Parliament. Some even played soccer in the streets, waving red cards at the building as a jab at the incoming president's soccer background.
Our new president, Kavalashvili, has zero education. He is not right for the position of president, and he has zero experience in how to rule a country.
Outgoing President Salom Zurabichvili, a staunch pro-EU critic of the ruling Georgian Dream Party, has emerged as a leader of the protest movement, declaring that she will remain president even after her term concludes. She has called the parliament illegitimate. The 4 main opposition groups have rejected Mikhail and have boycotted parliament, insisting that the election held in October was rigged. With Mikhail's inauguration approaching, Georgia faces continued protests and growing division over its future, especially regarding its ties with the West. The coming weeks will reveal how this political tension plays out. Samia Afsar, NDTV World.
Thank you for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.
New day, new show, a new experience. Start your day with the news, not views. We bring you stories that matter and impact your lives. News that informs and keeps you ahead. From Maximum City, Mumbai, to the seat of governance, Delhi, NDTV brings to you the best breakfast show. The breakfast show only on NDTV 24/7 every morning at 8 a.m.
NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number 1 in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust. In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
Mahakumbh, a festival of faith. The world's biggest spiritual festival. The divine dip at the spiritual Sangam.
a sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025.
We are able to maintain the democratic fabric and the democratic system.
I want to do something that can make a difference.
लगातार जनता की आवाज को सरकार तक पहुंचाने का काम मैं करता हूं.
I was a student up until very recently. I really want to work and do something for my people because they have given me this opportunity. They have elected me.
सोचा नहीं था कि राज्यसभा सांसद बनूंगी.